Welcome to the July 9th study session for City Council. We have 3 items on the agenda. We're going to stick to the timelines on those unless they go faster. So our first item is the 2019-2020 Council Work Plan Update. And who will be leading us off, Mark?
I am. Yes, thank you, Mayor. I need a prop first.
Oh, no. Gantt chart.
Yay.
Oh.
Get her done.
That suits you.
Thank you. Unfortunately, I get bad hair from a hat. All right, so we want to start off this evening here and share with you kind of an update on our work plan, council goals specifically. There's several things I want to kind of cover here this evening. I want to talk just a few minutes about what I call clarity of purpose. And then we're going to go into the specifics of the work plan. We're also going to pause a little bit here at the comp plan and the TMP. And I think staff, we're going to talk a little bit with you about what to expect here in the next couple of months. So we're now obviously getting, with your number one goal here, real close to the October date for which the council is going to be looking at adopting the comp plan and the TMP. So again, we want to give you a little bit of a view of what to expect from that. Then we're also just kind of march through the rest of the work plan items. And Sam has got a little bit of a demonstration of a software system that we're using here internally. This is called Smart Sheets. It's a way for us to kind of project manage. So we love the Gantt chart, and now we also have a system for project management. And there's also an outward-facing piece of Smart Sheets that has a dashboard. And so our intent is to kind of share this publicly on our webpage so that, quite honestly, our citizens can follow along with our progress. So we're going to cover all that here in this first item. So one of the things that I want to share with you is kind of my view of a framework that I believe our organization would benefit from. And I'm kind of wrapping this around what I call clarity of purpose. We've done a lot of discussion here in our community and certainly internally in the organization about values, vision, and mission. And of course, the whole comp plan starts with kind of that purpose, is trying to understand the values of our community. I just quickly put a few thoughts together here about values. I truly believe that it kind of builds the foundation for all of us to kind of make decisions. It's the lens that we use. Vision kind of sets a purpose, and mission kind of plots the course. So why is all this important? In my opinion, it's an opportunity for us to kind of build consensus around what is the vision for our community and the organization itself. How do we support all that? It's a much easier way for us to communicate to our citizens and certainly internally about who we are and why. Why are we this way? And many of council have kind of heard me talk about this before, but I believe that when you have a strong values, vision, and mission organization, honestly, I believe it inspires others to action. And in the end, I believe that's one of our main goals here, is to inspire our citizens and certainly to inspire our staff. Okay, so we've also had this conversation here not too long ago, and one of our speakers in the speaker series related to the comp plan also talked about this, organizational culture. So this is one of the initiatives here that we visited with council and talking about continuous improvement within the organization. In fact, Jennifer is going to be talking about a little update to council a little later in the next item about community development and our continuing efforts with continuous improvement. So great culture plus great strategies in the end gives us the great results. You can't have great strategies without a great culture. So in the end, all of these are kind of connected and related. So that's why we spend a lot of time talking about the organizational culture here at the City of Littleton. You heard the speaker here, here our second speaker, talk about a decision that you're going to make about organizational culture. Is it organic or is it by design? And I firmly believe it's by design. I believe that you can set the path, that we as leaders, that's our responsibility, in fact. Okay, second, please. So this is kind of taking kind of a list of a lot of things that we've been working on here in the last couple of years. And certainly credit to the council, been very specific about your goals, setting objectives, action steps, and we've been measuring that success over time. In fact, that's what this evening's all about, is to report back our success here in achieving those goals. Obviously, Envision Littleton, community values, talked a little bit already about kind of the organizational development plan internal to the city of Littleton. And one of our, bless you.
Excuse me.
And of course, one of our favorite subjects, priority-based budgeting. That's another effort for us to try to understand kind of services, programs. What's the priority? What's the cost? Ultimately, how do we align our resources with what council in the end decides is the priority? So how do we take all these things and kind of put them into some kind of a strategy? So my suggestion, this is a way for us to communicate externally and internally, and borrowing from others, to be honest. I love other ideas, and I'm not ashamed to admit I borrow this from others. So I kind of coined this our leadership framework. It's also our organizational framework. I love it because it has kind of a vision, the mission and values at the center. This is what we've been working hard on, trying to understand what our community wants for values, and certainly in our organization. At the outer ring of this, it starts with obviously the city council and our community. You are the ones charged with trying to plot the course here for the best interest of our community. How do we do that? Well, we spent a lot of time here in the last couple of years kind of working on council goals, more of a strategic planning approach, objectives, action steps, and the like. We're trying to make a connection here to priority-based budgeting. You know, what is the relative value? How does that fit into your strategic thinking? So ultimately that kind of spits out service plans. So if you make some decisions about the priorities for services and programs, obviously that's going to affect how we're going to deliver, whether it's patrol within police, snow removal in public works. The ultimate end, in my view, at least one of the ends on priority-based budgeting, is for council to make a decision about the level of service within the 500 plus programs and services we have. We're not going to do it in 1 year. We're going to do that over time. But we're going to talk a little bit about that and really the third item here this evening. So once we have service plans that are in line with strategic planning, priority-based budgeting, then it also translates then into the individual goals with our staff. So in order for us to implement the service plans, obviously the staff themselves have to understand how they fit into that service plan. One of the pieces that we're working on as well, measurement, review, analysis of how we're achieving these. And not just the community or the council goals, but internal. And again, we're going to talk a little bit more of a specific example, continuous improvement. And again, process improvement. And then it all comes back to the very beginning. We do this basically on an annual basis. So again, this is what I'm suggesting is kind of the framework. And kind of a quick summary, here's the kinds of things that I believe we need to kind of stay the course with. Obviously setting the values with Envision and internally to the organization. Think, plan, and build strategically. I think that was, again, one of our speakers kind of talked about the importance of think, plan, then build strategically. Align resources and with priorities, obviously priority-based budgeting, that's our path, many ways to achieve that. Create systems for predictable and reliable service delivery. The accelerated residential review process that we're going to talk about is kind of one example of creating a system that we want to be predictable and reliable. Align these individual goals with service plans, and again, measure and pursue process improvement. Last piece, communicate, communicate, communicate. One of the things I took away from one of the sessions at CML here was City describing the importance of communication, and we do a great job with that, but it just re-emphasized for me the importance of, especially something like this, your goals, and how the progress we're making is we need to communicate to our citizens, this is where we're going, and this is where we're at in time. We get a lot of questions about that internally here from, we see that, and so this is the way, in my view, to help kind of frame this effort and then be able to communicate more effectively over time. So thank you for letting me spend a couple of minutes talking about how I would hope to frame this. And I kind of put this little quote in here after raising 3 girls. You never know what you have until you clean your room. I kind of view this effort here of continuous improvement as doing just that, kind of stepping back, understand what we got in the room, and then see where we go from there. So I don't know if there's any comments or questions, but appreciate you giving me a couple of minutes on that.
I'm good.
Comments, questions?
No.
Very nice. Great.
Okay.
I think that means we agree.
Great, thank you. Appreciate the support.
Absolutely. That's all you get. We got things to do.
All right.
Well, in one of your reports, you did emphasize many times that if we're going to add anything, something moves.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, we only have so much capacity. You decide what the priorities are, but then we try to figure out.
Right, and you're at capacity now.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I appreciate you letting us know that.
Yes, appreciate that. Thank you. All right. So now with the report back onto the work plan, and I'm going to turn it over to Sama and actually Kathleen and Jennifer as well.
So we're going to briefly march through each of the goals and objectives. So for Goal 1, Envision Littleton, just a reminder, the objectives are the Comprehensive Plan, Transportation Master Plan, Santa Fe Corridor, Bellevue Corridor Vision Implementation, Economic Development, and code updates. We briefly want to highlight some of the work we've completed. With the Comprehensive Plan and Transportation Master Plan, we have completed phases 1 through 3. And at this point, I want to allow Jennifer and Kathleen to give an update on that.
Okay, so I'll start. We've shared with you and the community from the very start that the importance of a comprehensive plan is that it really becomes the North Star, right? Like it becomes that guiding force for us as a city. We're obviously looking at how it can clearly communicate who we are, but also what we're striving for over the next 20 years. I think we're taking it one step further by not just doing the normal cursory overview of transportation that a comprehensive plan would do, but we're actually digging a little deeper simultaneously with the Transportation Master Plan. And so if you remember, there are 5 phases. We're currently in phase 3, which is our biggest push to being out in the community, really trying to have that dialogue and conversation. It is about the future city. It is about the next 20 years. So really understanding, for me, it's that idea of pushing and pulling the levers, seeing what that results in. For practitioners and super wonky people, that's called modeling. So you get a sense of, what happens if you do this, what happens if you do that. And that's both on the land use and transportation side. So just to kind of give you a sense of what's next. So your next joint leadership meeting is August 13th. And you will be looking at drafts of both the comprehensive plan and transportation master plan.
Oh boy.
Right? It's here.
Pardon me.
Yes.
Transportation, now, is this involve the board?
Oh, Transportation Mobility Board?
No, this is different what we're talking about then.
So this is the transportation master plan. I don't know if you want to, from the standpoint of where the group got started with the Transportation Mobility Board, staff's been doing the work to get them up to speed so that they're prepared for the draft. And so they have an early August meeting. So I think that draft will come a little bit later than their August meeting, but they'll have an opportunity to kind of really dig in and look through that document and offer comments.
So at this point, they really haven't been involved on that.
No, they haven't. And, obviously they just started here.
April or May?
I think. Yeah, so we've been kind of helping them get ready for all of this. And yeah, you talk about drinking from a fire hose. They're going to get a draft of this thing right in front of them. Actually, they're very enthusiastic about this. And so Public Works started working pretty hard getting them ready for this.
This is really an internal document that has come up, and not from them. They're going to review it.
No, they're going to review it.
Will they review it before we do? Will they be looking at it before we do?
No.
You'll be the first looking at it.
Will they, just like the planning board is joining us for the comp plan review, should we have them join us for that same session?
Well, you're going to have let's see.
All right, let's continue.
Let's finish the rest of kind of the schedule here. We're talking
But
about
so just so that you know, it's coming, right? Like, so on that August 13th meeting will be your chance to kind of dig in. We'll guide you through that document. You'll have had some time to digest it, but we'll guide you through that document on the 13th. You'll have another session, a joint leadership meeting on September 10th, which will be that other opportunity to kind of dig in. We are making the document simultaneously available to the community starting August 14th. We'll start to push really hard that The documents are there for review, both in terms of looking at the review of the document, questions that people have, additional discussion that's needed, comments that they have on the document. They'll have that opportunity from August 14th to September 16th. A couple of things that we're doing to help stimulate that community conversation during that span of time include a telephone town hall, as well as the fourth of our speaker series this year, which we're anticipating hundreds of participants for that. And again, that's the event with author Peter Kajiyama for the Love of Cities. So those are both events that are still happening within that public comment period, because we want to make sure that we stimulate the community to understand this is still a draft, right? Like, you're looking at the first draft. Let's all contribute to how we get the right documents in place.
How does that town hall work, the telephone town hall?
This will be my first telephone town hall, but hugely successful for us because we can kind of dig in and have this conversation. So it calls out to members of the community. They stay on the line, and then we field questions that come in. I think those come in both from
online,
online.
from the phone.
So would they have there's a conference call number that people can make? How will we advertise that out to the public?
Social media.
Right,
It's been
it'll be in the next issue of the Littleton Report, for example, so that date's been published. It's on our envisionlittleton.org as a listed event. We're also looking at ways that we can make sure that we get that a little higher saturation. I think I'd like to talk with our communications team about doing another dedicated postcard to Envision. That was incredibly successful for us last year.
We've had
Touching all the
incredible
people.
success with the town halls. We have over 600 on the first one, I think even more than that on the other.
That's
So
awesome. It is.
both online and calling in, and every question, every comment ends up being put onto the website so that everybody, even people who didn't get their questions asked, they all get them answered. So, and then everybody gets to see that on the website, so it's very, very inclusive.
And we've done, what, two?
Two.
Yeah, they've been
They're
very
very
well attended,
successful.
Yeah, I have to admit, I actually enjoy doing them. They're a lot of fun. It's the amount of people that are participating really surprised me.
Yeah,
So,
and people could come in public too.
yeah.
So that's the update that I have. That may have exceeded my 2 minutes.
Any other questions before we move on? Do you have anything to add?
I would just like to add, in terms of our community outreach for this effort, we had a great meeting today with about 60 citizens over at the library. We'll be at the Criterium on August 3rd, having a little bit more of a hands-on street fair type thing to put some of the things that we're suggesting into practice. We'll also be at the farmer's market tomorrow.
Museum concert tomorrow.
Yes.
It's just so many events. It's such a blessing.
Summertime.
It's
So,
such
yes.
a blessing, right?
Yes.
Like, it's a great way to be
Farmers
out in the
market at
community.
Rinky's?
Aspen Grove.
Aspen Grove.
Yeah, which is around lunchtime. So it's like a 10 to 1. So,
Jennifer, what was the average age today? Would you guess?
60 plus?
Yeah, that's what I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
yeah, and it was an
Great.
afternoon session, yeah.
Yep.
So
But there was over 60 people there.
Yeah,
we did
awesome.
have members of the Next Gen Committee. Another young interested member, potential interested member for that group. So there was a little bit of a mix, so which was nice to see.
Great.
58.
I would say they were probably in their 30s, so.
So if I may, I just want to come back to the Transportation Mobility Board. So I think Public Works, again, we're trying to get them up to speed. They'll get a draft about the same time you do, but I think their review and input is more likely to be seen in the September meeting that you guys will have. So that's how we're trying to pull this thing together. You do have a joint meeting with them scheduled later in the year, but I think it's actually after the adoption of the comp plan.
The feedback I got from some individuals is they're very anxious to get involved, and it's been a little bit slow to get there as far as even just getting them access to information, etc. So they really want to get engaged as quickly as possible. I don't think it's a problem. I actually think it's an opportunity for them to participate in August 13th. If it's a question of too many people, I think they can, still at least hear
the, how you're introducing it, et cetera, so that they have the value of that, and from your timing perspective, and also so they hear our discussions. It's for them to kind of get it afterwards. I think they're designed to be there from the beginning as we are, and if they're.
It's a matter of timing, obviously, for them and when they got involved in this process. So I think we certainly can consider those things. I think I would recommend you stay focused between the council and the planning commission, because in the end, you are the two bodies, first the planning commission, then the council who's going to act on this thing formally. Having another board who makes recommendations to you, very appropriate, but I just want to make sure we don't lose sight of the joint meeting between the two bodies here, would be my suggestion.
I would
I
still
would
encourage them
suggest-
to be here,
Well,
even
no
if they're
problem.
not actively participating,
Absolutely.
to encourage
Yeah, I don't think
them.
that they need to be at the table, but I think that if they want to come and hear, that's fine.
That will be
I
quick,
think-
yeah, because they're on a calendar with us, I was just looking at the
Yeah,
calendar.
and it does get overwhelming, and I think the September meeting, they will have already had that, and then another meeting of their own, and probably have more knowledge, but they just don't have the basis for a lot of input at this point.
Yeah.
Okay, great. That's good feedback.
Ready to move on?
Okay,
Yep.
move on there, Sama, please.
Santa Fe River Corridor, just want to highlight that we've hit a number of milestones there. You'll hear more about this in Jennifer's presentation next. Code updates, in 2019 alone, we've completed recreational uses, the Phase 2 for impact fees, MS4 for our storm system, and the site development plan amendments is in implementation right now. Updates related to Goal 1, Bellevue Corridor Vision. That's been deprioritized to allocate resources to the river corridor, which has been prioritized. We should see more information about that after the comp plan. We can reevaluate those priorities. Economic development plan has been clarified and coordinated with the comprehensive plan, so you'll see more detail on the work plan now. Code updates, food trucks has transitioned to a pilot project. Metro districts has been added, and as a result, Jerry, you mentioned our capacity issues. Plan development amendments has been moved to 2020. Next steps for Goal 1 is to align the city code with the comprehensive plan. We'll be seeing that coming in 2020. Prioritization of transportation improvements and funding strategies, development of economic strategies, and a housing element of the comprehensive plan.
And so why on the code update, objective number 6, why did Metro District move up on the prioritization and plan development amendments move down?
Mostly because we have a development on the south end of Ensor who is proceeding through the development process. They haven't made a formal application yet, but we know they're going to have a Metro District. They've told us that. We already know that the development on the north end of Ensor, they're in process now. Unfortunately, we don't have any guidelines. If you remember, we had a quick conversation about Metro Districts here a couple of months ago. So whatever code issues that we pursue here in the, say the balance of the year is not going to affect the north end, but we believe it's to the city's advantage to consider those to make sure we manage appropriately the south 78 acres. That's kind of the intent.
Kathleen, when did you say that big teleconference,
August 28th.
it's August 28th?
Yes.
It's not
We didn't
on,
want to be on a Thursday because it might be preseason Broncos. Dwindles down the numbers
they do have some
considerably.
in preseason on Thursdays this year.
Yeah.
It just wasn't on the calendar, I was just wondering.
And what's the timeframe?
It's not on the calendar?
I don't.
It's on the Envision calendar on envisionlittleton.org,
Okay.
but we'll get it added to the city calendar because that's probably the one you're
Thanks,
looking at.
that's what I'm looking at, yeah. Cool, thanks. Sorry.
Okay, moving on to Goal 2, financial sustainability. Just a reminder, our objectives for this include priority-based budgeting, evaluation of existing fees and opportunities, 5-year financial plans, identification, assessment, and prioritization of long-term needs, as well as opportunities for funding. Completed items include the priority-based budgeting program and cost update and phase 1 of program reviews. You'll hear more about this in the last presentation today. On the evaluation of existing fees and opportunities, we've completed an update to the current impact fee model and a review of cost recovery within the priority-based budgeting system. 5-year financial plans are complete for all funds. And we
Let's
start-
pause here a minute. I want to celebrate that. Kudos to Tiffany in finance and all the other departments, but
That's big.
that's a big deal. So,
Yay, thank
thank you.
And we've started the Transportation Mobility Board. We do also have some updates on this goal in the evaluation of existing fees and opportunities. The cost of service study has been synced with the budget process. The sewer and storm rate studies have been synced with the wastewater treatment plant processes as well. In the identification, assessment, prioritization of long-term capital needs, asset management system implementation and fiber optic master plan have been extended to allow for additional implementation. And the grounds and landscaping assessment will begin in July. Reviewing opportunities for funding, polling will begin in July. Next steps for 2020 include sewer and stormwater utility rate structure, year 3 of priority-based budgeting, asset management, inventory and assessment, and refinement of funding options. Just want to highlight some of the other projects we included in your work plan. Specifically, Office 365 and the Track at 9 conversion, we now have dates for this process. Office 365 transition is expected to be completed in October 2019. Track at 9 has started now and is expected to be completed in April 2020. With that, I'd like to do a quick demo before we go to questions.
Yeah, if you remember, the council was getting by mistake some emails about the smart sheet, and apologize for that again, but it was mostly internal, but now you're going to see.
You got us all twisted.
Yeah, sorry about that.
What are we supposed to do?
Create a password.
Give it to Randy, give it to Randy.
So this is why it's important for us as an organization, internally as staff, to kind of pursue this, and you'll again see an upward face.
I want to start just by high level showing you what we're going to be using internally for dashboards. So this is an internal summary for the 2019-2020 Council Work Plan. You can see each goal, objectives, and the overall health for them, as well as we have links so we can get to the Envision Littleton website right from here. From these, we can drill down and we can get a dashboard that takes us into the action steps. Internally, this is where we'll be focusing on helping us manage our projects. We'll be able to, for example, pull up a report of any behind schedule action steps and triage that and work through why that might be and rectify any situations needed. We, of course, have a Gantt chart available.
Thank you, Mayor.
And upcoming tasks coming in the next 30 days. We are still in the implementation process right now, so just be aware that the percentages you are seeing may or may not be correct as we finish getting the system set up. This is what we'll be focusing as staff.
Is this what you're planning on making accessible publicly as well?
Oh,
These?
now we're going to show you
A
what that's
slightly
going to look
different
like
version.
externally.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you for being with us.
So very similar for the public version. We've just taken the detail level down a little bit and focused more on events that the public might be interested in. So we still have the high level where you can see everything. Now you'll notice we have objective progress here. So you can see not started, in progress. We've still got the links so you can get to the Envision Littleton website, and if needed, we'll add links for other items. You can still drill down on the public side. You'll be able to see summary of action step status, whether they're started, complete, in progress. You'll still be able to see a Gantt chart with a full schedule.
Question. Where does it show that we're on schedule?
So that on schedule can be seen here in this, but also in the not started and in progress.
It doesn't really tell us whether we're on schedule, it just says what started or not,
Yeah.
but, which is good. I mean, it's great. But yeah, so is there a separate chart for on schedule?
There isn't on the public dashboard currently. Certainly we could add one. Right now we do have this action step summary with the existing timelines, and so these would help you be able to see if we're on schedule or
And
not.
I think this is fine. I think this is fine.
It shows the in
This is
progress.
so much
Almost
more.
everything that we're doing is in some level of progress. I
Yeah.
think it's indicative. If it hasn't started, but over half of it's done and another third of it's started, and I mean, it's just, there is a process to this, and I think it shows that process. I think it's very
I think it's good.
telling on how it really does, how long it really does take to get things through, and how many steps that includes. It's not just have an idea and take a vote. So I think it's I think for those who are interested, they will appreciate this.
What does it take to keep this updated and managed and maintained?
Yeah, before we answer that, which is a great question, and I do want to talk about it.
Rita, you are on.
Show the
I'm making up
last
for last Tuesday when I was so off.
So there is one more piece of this that's, I think, will be very interesting for people, and this is meetings and events coming up in the next 30 days. So this is going to be any community engagement opportunities, any council meetings, planning commission meetings, anything related to the council work plan that's coming up that the community has an opportunity to be involved in.
It's great.
So one of the things that we've been talking about internally is to have one system for which all the staff can participate in to help kind of manage very complex projects. So you can't do this verbally. So any of us who've been in this kind of work know that there's a lot of things that can go wrong here with a big complex project. So we had to build a system here, quite honestly, that's automated. So each piece, or people are assigned to this, and so they are responsible for the one piece and keep that up to date. So it's an electronic version. Then it all feeds up into one kind of larger system. So staff spent a lot of time kind of deciding what is it that we can manage easily, effectively. There are much more complicated systems you could go towards, but we picked the smart sheets largely because we felt internally we could manage this pretty effectively for an organization our size.
Yep, once posted on the website, it will be a live update. So as people are editing things, it will reflect here. So with that, any questions?
Nice job.
I'm going to bookmark that as my favorite.
Next.
All right.
Okay.
You know, as I'm looking at your Gantt chart, you don't have that many things that you've actually delayed or, you know, it's other than the fee type stuff, sewer rates.
And I appreciate that. I think that's our goal, is we obviously don't want to delay anything, and we spend a lot of time making sure that, you know, we got the resource in place. So if, you know, something comes up that the council says, hey, you know, we really got to deal with whatever it might be, big giant sinkhole, then, you know, perhaps.
For example.
In the same spot.
Then we can tell you, okay, in order to move resources there, then staff can go back and decide, okay, well, who gets involved in that? What does that mean for the other projects? So,
But I like though that it's in the Gantt chart though, where things that have been delayed.
yeah, thank you.
Okay. And for those of us that don't get Gantt charts, we like the other aspects of Smart Sheets too, so. So I'm Jennifer Henninger, Community Development Director. I have Carl Onsager with me, planner. And we are going to just give you kind of a state of the community development department, if you will, and just what we've been able to do since we were last before you. I think it was in March, I think it was last time. So for the first time in a very long time, we actually are pretty much fully staffed. On the planning side, we are completely staffed. And this has been fantastic. We have a planning staff now that has quite the breadth and depth of experience on the planning side that will serve this community well. We also have a full building department right now that includes an electrical inspector as well as a roofing inspector. As you will recall, in past years, we have had to contract those services out. So we have been able to bring those in-house for the first time. We are just down one code enforcement officer right now. But that is, people have asked, what is community development and what do you do? So we do cover the building code enforcement, planning, as well as community outreach. So that is the whole department. As part of our Design the Future process that we have been doing over the last 18 months, we identified core values for the department. And these core values were discussed, created, adopted, and now actually signed. We have a printed version of these and have been signed by a member of the community development team. And these are core values that we now operate by. So we have the core values of how we work together as a team. This was a long process for this team. And it has been a fantastic outcome of how we work together on a much higher level, much more collaborative level, and also then in turn, we provide a better service to the community, providing predictability.
Now, part of that, is that all part of what Noel was working on?
Yeah, and yes, correct. You
Yeah.
know, while community development may be tip of the sword, so to speak, you know, Noel was responsible for getting this organizational development plan so that the entire organization is kind of following this example. So, yeah, good question.
Yes.
You can say that louder if you want, because, you know, I know Karina was getting all the, did you hear him even? Did it? He said, good question.
Do you want me to do that?
So, okay, I'm a little sensitive.
So, and also part of those core values and how we serve the community of really taking an educational role, that we are here to help educate the community, again, providing that predictable process and transparent process and more open communication with those that we serve, whether they are businesses, citizens, homeowners, all that sort of stuff. Some other things that we have been able to accomplish with the Design the Future process is our engagement team has developed engagement and outreach toolkit. We have used this for a lot of our Envision Littleton processes that we have been doing, as well as for the code updates. We have a whole process of how we update codes and what the public outreach is and updating those codes. Code enforcement has worked very hard on updating the web page, so in the next few weeks you will see basically more user-friendly, better links, so when people have questions about dogs or trash, it comes up a little bit more readily than it did before.
Dr. Koch just did a engagement and outreach toolkit as well. So it might be good to like just cross-reference and see if there's any other opportunities. And in fact, the person that was leading it was the woman that interviewed for one of our boards.
Lisa Howard.
Lisa.
We will look into that. We also have been able to do small cell design guidelines, and this was an FCC requirement. And because of a lot of the work that we had done previously, we were able to pull together this information more rapidly than we would have been able to in the past. And then I would say our crowning jewel at this point is the standing up of the Rapid Residential Review Center. And this is where we have tried to simplify getting a building permit for a homeowner. We call them our weekend warriors that want a fence permit or a bathroom fan permit or want to do tiling, things that they just need a simple permit for. So I have some metrics that we now have been tracking on that I'll share with you in just a minute. In terms of our current project caseload, so you heard Sam kind of talk about all the different initiatives and your council work plan. So on top of the council work plan, we have regular kind of day-to-day stuff that comes through our department. On the planning side, these are the different kind of cases that we've handled, and you can kind of see what we have in progress and what we have done so far in 2019. In terms of our rapid residential review, we are going on week 8 of that. Yes. And it has been very well received by the community. And we have, I want to say, like 99% pass rate. Really, I think the 2 issues that we have had to do with zoning, that they weren't allowed zoning-wise, so they couldn't get their permit for that case. But we have been able to do that, and typically we're able to process those in under an hour. So if somebody comes in, they're walking out with a permit.
Do you have this in a system besides Excel that you can actually track it over time, that there's been, a surge in deck remodels, and just out of curiosity?
So this is limited to just the residential review, and one of the things we use is Google Sheets, and so that allows everybody access to
Put it in.
We get to check in, and so they'd sign in, but we use that as our central repository also for whether they passed, whether they need to resubmit. You know, somebody had to come back next week because they hadn't cleared their utility easements. And so they just revised their plans and came back. So that allows us, but we do look at kind of broader metrics for all of permits using Trackit, but this is limited to just the residential review.
And one of the other things that we also have begun to track is when we receive an application in, how long we're having it in review, and then when we send it back out to a contractor to get their comments and have them make the changes. So we're tracking that now as well, and trying to again, shorten our review times that we have it.
How do these review times compare to the old way?
Prior to the rapid residential review, we were telling people 15 days, 15 business days.
No matter what, it was just,
We had one line and you got into that one line.
that's what it was.
So this now allows a
Hours.
much, yeah,
Yeah.
especially for the scale of projects.
And I'm assuming you didn't really know how long it was taking.
No, and another issue that we had is that we would take in applications and not know that they were missing information until we actually got to it, which would be,
Right.
15 days later. So that is another policy that we've put into effect, is that our permit techs, when they take in an application, they have a checklist that they go by, and the application has to have everything on that checklist, and if it does not, we do not actually take the permit. We only will take it when it's complete. That way, we're not wasting their time.
Good job.
Any questions on rapid residential review?
So they come in with that checklist and their documentation. Is that a 10-minute process where you go through it and say, yep, it looks like you got, and then you're able to review it at that point?
In theory,
Okay.
but it really depends on what they bring in to meet that checklist. If we've asked for some type of sketch plan, and I kid you not, we have gotten things in on napkins, we need to ask them to redo that and put it on something that's reproducible. So it has happened. So yes, in theory, hopefully we're just sitting there checking it, and it doesn't take that long.
Okay, good.
So. One of the other processes.
I'm sorry,
Yes.
Jennifer. I want to just take this as an opportunity. We had a very timely question about whether or not we could extend this kind of a process to another part of our code here, specifically signs. And the importance of continuous improvement and just using the rapid residential review as the example. This is the first one coming out of the department. We obviously want to make sure that we kind of support this and really nurture this process here to make sure that we are successful, that we go through the full measurement of this, reassess, realign, and so that we can have some success. I think at that point, we already see as staff, we've already been getting suggestions for other things, and there's all, the development review here is just ripe for all sorts of process improvement. And so we see things, and signs being one of them. So I think the challenge for the future is for, quite honestly, the staff, let's fine tune this, make sure we're comfortable internally about how to make this improvement. Then we make sure that we have capacity for the next topic. And so we take that one on, deciding what's the priority. I think we're still probably trying to figure that out, but we do see plenty of opportunity for us to improve other processes within community development. Does that make sense?
Is Bob Tipton still involved, or is he on?
He is, so slowly phasing out.
Okay.
We're really taking ownership
Good.
of it. So we're doing that phase out, and we kind of plan a official closeout with our contract with him in September.
Okay.
Given that the process now is more efficient, and as you said, you're also more effective as a department, are you able to begin to see where there are maybe code, like the way our code is written is actually creating a process problem so that you can bring those back to the table to say,
Yes.
you can refine the process as much as you want, but really what's broken is the policy.
Yes. 100%. We actually have a Google Doc that is tracking when we're catching these holes
Oh,
and
you didn't want to
catching
show
these
us that
issues.
No, not tonight.
Yes, that's part of our budget request, you all. For
Appreciate it.
Excellent. So, actually, do you want to talk about the quasi judicial?
Absolutely. So this is born of an improvement that was identified a number of months ago. The MailChimp emails that you get once a month, give or take, for notifying you of all the active quasi-judicial cases. This is one of those things where it's a first step towards an improvement and seeing additional room for steps that we can take to make sure that we are being as proactive, notifying you and all the necessary boards and commissions of these quasi-judicial cases. It's important for you as our council, the city from a liability standpoint, and just for the applicants to have a fair shake when they get to their public hearings. So you will still be getting those monthly emails with kind of some of those metrics, and I'll follow up with a few additional questions of what's particularly useful if you like kind of the graphics, or if there's more information or less information you would like. But then also starting off with, as soon as we get in a quasi-judicial case, be it a rezoning, a public or a PD amendment, any of those, we'll immediately send out an email generated from Trackit. So this is, very small additional work that needs to happen to make that happen and get to both council and all the necessary boards. So that way you have an initial notice and then also some routine follow-ups, because that will be just the one case specific, and then kind of the list of, hey, by the way, here's all the cases that we still can't talk about because they are limited by quasi-judicial rules. So probably a pared down, and we're working with IT to make that as easily generated as possible while still being readable and functional for you. And then, like I said, a monthly email, and I would love to follow with some feedback of what's most relevant to you, and if kind of seeing all the SDP cases or things like that is worthwhile, or if it's just kind of more noise in the clutter. So yes.
I have a couple questions on that. One is, first of all, the MailChimp thing. For me, that's fine, it gives that, but it does not say red alert, red alert, red alert, and that is the problem. That is what we need. Just for giggles, I went back and checked. I get about 75 emails a day. And so a little MailChimp comes in, and, I've got a quasi-judicial on there. That is the most priority email I got that day. But it's just part of 75 that are sitting there. So I really want there to be something that is bigger and grander. And I also think that part of the problem with emails like that is that sometimes a council member may not get to their council email for 3 or 4 days. We all have other emails too, and so it may not get checked. The other thing is that how do you know they saw it? I mean, you need us to say back to you, I confirmed, I see this, I understand it. Or if they see it and there's a question about it, then they have an opportunity for that. I just talked to a couple planning board members that had no idea that the answer was a quasi. We cannot, it has been for 3 months. So it just needs to be bigger, and I don't know, I looked at that chart and stuff, and I don't want to walk through that thing. I'm sorry. I know you guys are really working hard on this, and I think that there's a way that it's got to go through your system too, but man, if you are going to tell us, it has got to be, a singing telegram.
So can you pull up the email that just came out? One that just came out like last week or something, or this week?
So absolutely, and this is the sort of feedback that, as the person who puts that together, is extremely valuable. So one, I think, hopefully, and we can add as many flashing things.
A big finger going like this.
Sirens.
Do it.
That's okay if you can't.
I'm not sure I can do that. Sorry, I'm not sure where.
So there's definitely, I echo what you're saying, like there's a balance of communicating a lot, but then you stop looking at it, right? Because it just feels like routine, and so there has to be some trigger that says you really need to read this one and we have to acknowledge it. So another comment I'll make, because I did pull up the email and looked at it, was, so you click on the project and it takes you to all of the various files. Hard to do. And then you click on the address. There was also a hyperlink to the address, and the intent of me clicking on the address was to be able to get to a map to actually see where it was, and it just takes me to the same place, which is all the documents. So I want to see where it is and what it is. And the links are going to the same place, so it's hard for me to find that.
That's the feedback he needs.
If I can definitely work on a solution to that. So one of the positives of MailChimp and one of the reasons I chose that is I can tell who's opened those emails. And so there's that accountability mechanism as well. And
I think that's great. I really, really think you need us to tell you we saw it.
Absolutely.
I think the fact that I opened an email doesn't mean I read it.
Okay.
You know what I mean? I mean, you just flip it through or something. I don't think, we just need a fail-safe, and the best way to communication. So if we're not gonna get a phone call about a quasi, which isn't necessary, then you've got to have something from us that is us saying back to you, got it.
There's a reply receipt confirmation. There's something like,
I don't know if that's a capability in that. So it's kind of that balance. I know I can read receipts in Gmail, but not maybe in that. I'll follow up and see the best way.
I
So
think
this
it's
is-
also, I mean, council meets once a week, so Mark can tell us once a week what's going on too, but I think
That's
where
up
it's
to-
also really huge is our boards and commissions. And so they don't meet as often, and it's just as important to them too. And they don't check their emails, their emails, city emails nearly as much as the council people do. So I just think that think about that too. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think there's a difference. There's an issue of, yeah, I opened it, and yeah, I read this and I think I understand it. And for me, understanding it might take 3 times as long as somebody else, or in some cases, it'd be the other way around. So it's an issue of whether or not we really understand it, or we just opened it.
well, but one thing is, so that email, if it does nothing else, it has to clearly say, this project is quasi-judicial. Don't talk to anybody. Like, if you understand nothing else, you need to understand which project you should not talk to anybody about. So if we can make that clear, then in time, you can reach out and understand. But I think that's the primary purpose of that email.
A zipper icon.
The only thing to understand is don't talk about
Exactly.
this.
Zip it up.
And I
So it's
think-
more of a directive than an opportunity to understand.
Yeah, and I think it will also be very helpful in 2 weeks.
Couple of weeks.
We have Sam Light, who's the new,
Sursa.
yeah, what's his title? He took over Tammy Tenoy. Tammy is the executive director, so Sam has taken over her position.
Training or
and-
something like that.
Well, it's a director or something like that. But anyway, he's going to come out and we have a study session before a meeting to start at 5:30 with him, and we'll have an hour with him on quasi-judicial. So I would like you guys to think about that he's going to be here and talking about that and some questions you may have. We've had a number of things pop up, even with our boards and commissions, and so this is a time to get clarity here from the person who holds our liability insurance on this. And if things pop up from that we may want to include, Sam may have some ideas, we may have some suggestions that can be dropped in, but I think, and I don't know if other cities or how they handle it or what they do, but there may be some things there too. But I think 2 things need to happen. 1, it needs to be clear and obvious, and 2, it needs to be simple. And Peggy, I respect what you're saying, and it gives her a trigger, would give any of us a trigger to go, okay, it's quasi, but I don't really understand. I can make a call, I can send an email, but now I know what I'm talking about, so.
What date is that then?
It's next,
17th is one of the dates.
17th is when Sam's coming.
I think councils is different.
Yeah, we have the study session, and I'm sorry, I don't have the calendar in front of me, but Sam Light is coming for, I think it's in 2 weeks.
23rd is a study session.
Yeah, well, I think sorry, I guess I should have brought that document, but.
I haven't.
Is it before a regular meeting though?
Yeah, it's before a regular
Yeah,
meeting.
It's at 5:30.
Yep, it's a
Before
5:30
regular.
start.
So next Tuesday.
Next Tuesday.
Oh, it is,
Yeah,
next Tuesday.
July
Okay,
16th,
all right.
it starts at 5:30, and then we have a regular meeting, which looks kind of short.
But
at this
it's on the
point.
calendar, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, then we also have 2 dates here for our boards and commissions for which mandatory for them to pick one date to come, and Sam's going to give a similar presentation. Our intent is to try to work in this notification process here. As you see, it's anticipated to be done here by August 1st. It won't be necessarily done by when Sam's here with the boards and commissions, but we'll certainly give them a heads up so these members know what to expect when they see it.
Just a couple more slides here. So in addition to our active cases that we also do have the work plan, which includes Santa Fe River Corridor, the Evergreen Enzer property, River Park, it has multiple names now. So the Denver Water Main Street grant, possibly some opportunities, partnership opportunities with what Denver Water needs to do. Metro districts, again, the code amendment that Sam had talked about, update to the 2018 international codes. So these are all the building codes, electrical codes, all that. So our building department is actually working very diligently, walking through all the amendments that Littleton has specifically to the existing, I believe we're on the 2012. It's 2012. International code, so walking through what needs to be modified, and then as part of the 2018, walking through that code and what will need to be amended for Littleton specific. So you'll see that coming up early part of next year. Then we have the Track at 9, so that actually kicked off today. We have a Track at 9 expert on ground working with planners, code enforcement, building, and other departments within the city, basically tracking or following what we do and how we're using Track It currently, and our other development processes that we could, again, automate, for better terms, the Track It and automate that whole process. So he's working with us on how we do that, and then basically create a program within Track It that would do that. So this will be a multi-month process, getting this up to speed, working out the kinks and all of that. But everyone is very excited to have this upgraded capability. And then next year we'll also have the census outreach. So we've been working very closely with communications. So Ryan in our department, the community outreach, he's been working with communications, and they've also been working with Sheridan and Englewood, kind of a Tri-Cities approach to this whole census thing.
I actually think it's larger than that too. Kelly said it's including more of the South Metro, Greenwood Village, Cherry Hill.
Awesome.
So,
Okay.
That is fantastic. So, and we were just made aware that there is quite a bit of grant money out there for census outreach efforts. So we will definitely apply for some of those to bolster that. I just wanted to give a few slides on the Santa Fe River Corridor and kind of what we have been doing internally to put ourselves in a position to work with stakeholders and develop basically an add-on, if you will, to the comp plan. So we met in April internally as staff. We had members of Public Works and Community Development, Communications, Economic Development, that we all met and kind of just identified the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats along the river corridor. And during that time, we really kind of identified that there's 4 distinct segments of the river. We have, this is down by Aspen Grove. That's the U shape at the bottom. So that kind of bottom part, actually middle. So we have that. We've also have done a plans analysis. Carl has taken all of the existing plans that mentioned anything about the river. And this is actually only half of them, believe it or not. So we really kind of put it through a matrix of different topic areas, land use, transportation, access, all that, and identified what these plans had in common, and are really going to be taking that forward with a consultant and moving a plan forward on that.
I'm sorry, Jennifer,
Yes.
can we just pause back to your little list of plans? One piece that I guess I learned from here in this effort, there actually is an existing corridor plan for the same area. I didn't realize that.
The Santa Fe corridor?
Yeah.
Right, I was gonna ask that, is that included?
Yeah.
It was it was the longest one,
And that was a
for
long
obvious
time.
reasons.
Jerry worked on that one.
That was a long time.
You worked on that one, right?
I think so.
Yeah. Yeah.
Obviously, a lot of things have changed since 2000, but still, I guess
Well, I
learned
think
something.
Some things haven't.
the other thing to note about these plans.
I haven't changed a bit.
The South Platte, you want to talk about the South
Well,
Platte?
no, the other thing to note about these plans is that they're not, Littleton didn't do them all. South Platte River Corridor falls in Arapahoe County, falls in South Suburban, falls in South Platte Working Group, and so this is not just, this is a culmination of a whole bunch of people who have a whole bunch of different interests along that area. So they all have, there's some crossover information, but there's a lot of,
But we're bringing that all together as it relates to the Santa Fe corridor.
Correct. And that filter was also derived from our vision and goals for the community. So even if we're looking at other plans that came from other communities or the region, as a whole, it's filtering it through the values of Littleton. And so that's part of the value of that process as well.
yeah. I mentioned that because we've spent a lot of money over the years on plans
Yes,
and we
we have.
never go anywhere. This is not an indication of plans that we've spent. a lot
Santa
of
Fe
money.
corridors, I may be the only one we've done. So everything else was done by somebody else.
Maybe. Well, we did the bike and ped study. Littleton did that.
And then Arapahoe County did one.
Yeah, they went for Arapahoe County,
Yeah.
but we did one just for Littleton.
That's a great use of this. I mean, I
The
think
guiding
you just
principles.
articulated how this is very helpful, useful, and strategic. Because there's a lot of great ideas there, but this is what it has to come down to for Littleton.
Correct.
Great. That's important to convey.
And that is something, so the guiding principles, we've actually put those up in our department as well, in particular in our development conference room. So when we're meeting with people, they can see those guiding principles and what we are filtering everything through. In terms of engagement, we've kind of broken it up into those segments that I talked about, so you can see all the segments here on the map. So we actually had a meeting today with the downtown segment, those stakeholders. So we met with them today. We did one in May, that was with the Aspen Grove South. And then again, some other ones coming up here.
So these are very targeted stakeholder meetings, which is different than just general public outreach at this
Correct.
juncture? Okay.
Correct. So we did have, was that in February? Last time we met with the group as a whole, I think.
I think it was,
Mayor.
it may have been February. We met with them in October and again in February. So by stakeholders, who do you consider stakeholders?
Property owners, business owners.
That's it. Okay.
For right now. So. And all of this, again, we're trying to meet with stakeholders, get an idea of what we want to have happen here to really help us start to position ourselves for the PEL, the Planning Environmental Linkage Study, that CDOT is wanting to do, and that's in conjunction with the county. I believe Sheridan and Englewood will be involved in that one as well.
City, County, and Denver,
Yes.
Arapahoe County, Douglas County.
All kinds of folks, yeah.
Right.
And our rep is Keith?
Yes, currently Keith and maybe Brent Thompson, some of the other, here in Human, and I'm guessing. But yeah, I'm sure all the council probably saw the email from Keith here a couple of weeks ago. So good news,
Yeah.
it's moving forward. Maybe the bad news, it's starting real quick here, so.
It's moving forward.
Yeah. You know,
It
this
goes
is-
slow until it doesn't.
Yeah, I don't think, we've been trying to assess, really when is the public engagement by CDOT really gonna start? And we're guessing it's probably late spring of next year. So we believe a lot of this work that we're doing now is gonna position us really well for that conversation, by the way. This is really timely on our part. And
Starting what, spring?
this is where CDOT will come and start a very public process for almost 2 years to actually engage everybody, all property owners through this entire corridor to try to decide ultimately what is the footprint of the future of Santa Fe? How many lanes? What do the interchanges look like, intersections? And, we've talked about this and the need for this, and obviously we have to get this step done in order for us to achieve or receive the federal money here for these larger intersection improvements.
And we have to be very prepared for this because this is not CDOT's community. CDOT runs a highway through our community. So when they're looking at egress and ingress, and when they're looking at adding lanes, we're looking at residential homes, we're looking at businesses, we're looking at commuter stuff. We're looking at things from a lot more human perspective than they are. And so they're going to be in here for 2 years stirring it up. So we need to not only be a calming force, but we need to have ourselves well organized and the community by, we're all talking the same talk to this so that CDOT, they will listen to that. They will not listen to noise. They will listen to organized, logical information.
Yeah, just to emphasize that, the fact that if we have a city and all of these property owners, and I don't even remember how many there are now, all saying in a united voice, this is what we want, that is a very, very powerful message to CDOT. So I think we're positioning ourselves really well for this.
That was it.
Questions?
Awesome.
Thank you.
Good job.
Good job.
Nice.
Next.
Keep it going.
Yes, did I forget something?
I-
Oh, yes.
So we shared with Planning Commission kind of a skeletal outline of the comprehensive plan. So I just wanted to share this, the same document with you all, so you have that as well.
I'm sure it'll spark a million questions.
Yes.
At least it's starting to give you a little framework for how this comp plan is going to start to come together. And obviously much more context when we meet here 13th of August.
Yeah.
You get it.
Yep, got it.
Thanks, Kelly. Okay, next up is, Tiffany is going to be going over, this is our quarterly update on priority-based budgeting. So, Tiffany and Santa, talking numbers,
Not necessarily numbers.
talking priority-based budgeting.
Save the best for last, right, Tiffany?
So council, I don't know if you recall, but we did meet with you earlier in the year in March, and we presented a timeline for the PBB program over this next year. And what we promised and are delivering to council is our quarterly updates to kind of give you an idea of where we are, where we're headed, and what you're going to see in the coming months and into the future years on PBB. So a little bit about where we are now. We're in our second year of implementation. We really ramped it up last year. We got departments involved. It was a learning process throughout the organization on identifying programs. Some programs were identified that we probably didn't even really understand that we had that program. So it's been very enlightening to go through some of the programs that we do offer from the city. Right now, we're in phase 2 of the blueprint and program review. We did have a blueprint program that we developed, or actually ResourceX developed, kind of a model for us to go by. And what we did internally is we took that kind of mapping that they gave us and we actually developed a template to kind of help departments work through that blueprint that was provided by ResourceX. And I think it's important to note that they've kind of grabbed onto that template that was developed by us in Littleton, and they're sharing it amongst all of their clients now. We actually were contacted. I know, it's outsourcing, I know.
Kickback of some sort.
I know, fees, I get it, outsourcing. But I think what's important and notable is that we did develop that internally, and now it's being used nationwide, essentially. We were contacted by ResourceX to meet with another organization in Joplin, Missouri, to kind of talk to them about our program and how we started it, how we're going through it.
It is Missouri, you gotta show them.
Touche.
Yeah.
They're calling it the Littleton model. and
They are,
touting
yeah.
it as the best practice now.
Yeah. So yeah, they've definitely taken that and found value in that and are using that throughout.
Tiffany, I have a question on the program.
Sure.
So I think we know what the big programs are. How do you get into that minutia of maybe a program that only goes a couple times a year, it's only, $1,000? I mean, because I know you're going that deep. How do you?
Yeah. Well, we kind of designed some parameters when we first started going through this. And essentially the rule of thumb was about 5% of your total costs could be a program, 5% or more of our total budget. There's definitely some things that are more visible in the community that we felt it is important to identify those, so that you're going to see some that are likely smaller than that. But that was kind of our rule of thumb, is kind of on a case-by-case basis, just working with the departments and really understanding the programs that they're providing.
It's not a science. That's one of the areas we're still developing on here is where should programs be combined across departments, where should they be separated out? One of the key things we've talked about with priority-based budgeting is it is a cultural change in how you're thinking about things. And so we've also focused, if you have a program that's maybe smaller than our criteria we set for, is there a story to tell about that? Is there a service you're providing that you need to increase or maybe you want to decrease? What's that story? And if it's compelling, you can make it a program.
What's an example of a program that is a surprise that we have?
This might be a surprise to some people, Peat Patch Community Gardens.
Yeah, I think we have two Pea Patch Gardens in Littleton, and we charge a nominal fee related to that program and provide land for citizens to have a garden.
And water.
And water. So there's costs associated with that program. So we also want to kind of let you know what you're going to expect in August. We did schedule a study session in late August to really look at some specific programs and kind of have some interaction with council and some feedback on that. And then in the future years, year 3 and 4, and it should say 3, 4, and forever, essentially. We are continuously reviewing the programs to see if there's an expanded use for those. And then what we also want to incorporate into that is council recommendations. We want to work with council and get some ideas from you as to what programs you might want us to dive deeper in that we may not be looking at specifically. And then just a tidbit, we have over 522 programs noted right now, and it changes, as needs change, as internal decisions are made, that might go up and that might go down, but just kind of give you a pinpoint as to how many we have currently. And we did dwindle that down from over 800 when we first started.
522 active?
Yes.
And when you say whittle it down, is it because you've sunset them or you combine them?
Combining is the majority, yeah. One thing that we realized when we were going through the first year is that, a lot of departments do the same things, and so they had the same program name, and so we really worked this past year to try to combine those amongst the entire organization. So that was the majority of the reduction in the number of programs. Plus, if you have more, it's just hard to manage. I mean, I'm trying to review that many programs over however many years takes a lot of staff time and review, so. So you've seen this before, it's kind of a picture of the blueprint, and like I said, this is what was provided by ResourceX, and we created a template to go even further related to the program reviews. So a little bit about phase one. If you recall, we broke it up into 3 phases, the blueprint review. Phase one we've completed. This allowed departments to take a deep dive into the programs that they identified and really look at identifying some potential opportunities with those programs. A little bit of information related to that review is we did identify about 30 potential efficiencies, 31 outsourcing or insourcing potential opportunities, and then maybe some service level changes, about 13 of those. And I think it's important to understand that in phase one, we are just identifying, and kind of our mantra was, no idea is a bad idea, so let's talk about it, you know, put it on the list, let's discuss it, and we can move on with that.
We really asked departments to take away any of their assumptions they had for the program and really think about what we could do. What is the whole realm of possibilities here?
Is there ever thought of stopping a program?
Yes.
Absolutely.
It's not mentioned in.
It's really covered
unless
in
it's in the
service
level of
level.
change, right
Yes.
down to 0.
Yeah, so that would be a conversation that, depending on the program, would come to council, and we would talk about the recommendation to reduce that service level to 0.
So phase two is where we are currently, and this is where the departments have identified some opportunities for that program, and now we want them to actually explore those opportunities. We want them to find out who else is providing this program. Is there a city, is there a county, is there a private organization that is providing this service or program? Again, outsourcing or insourcing, are there opportunities? And you know, this is where we're probably going to look at the actual costs related. Is there a cost savings? If we want to increase a program service level, is there an increased cost to that program? And what are we going to do to offset that? So phase two is really where we're expecting to get some really good feedback and information from the departments on what they found out there in the community. Can there be efficiencies internally? Again, that may not necessarily be a cost savings, but it could be definitely an opportunity to reallocate resources within staffing levels.
And then Tiffany, would you, and you probably are, but I think including in that opportunities for income?
Yes,
Okay.
fees or grants, that's definitely a part
Well,
of it.
and on outsourcing and insourcing, I mean, there's that, you know, swap that you can do with another community, but then there's also that, oh, you don't offer that and we do, you can do it here cheaper thing.
Right.
So, and how we can, you know, we both end in, you know, how we can make money on that, on stuff like that.
All of those are on the table, and I think in our first set of potential opportunities, we have something that covers everyone.
Everything, okay.
Yeah, I think an example, and this didn't necessarily come out of PBB, but it definitely is a correlation to it, is sales tax return processing. So we're working with the bank currently to have them process our sales tax returns. There's a fee related to that, but based on some agreements that we have with the bank, it may not necessarily be that expensive to the city, and so it'll essentially be a cost savings. So that's kind of one of the things that we're hoping that other departments are going to research or seek out and find.
That's good info.
And this recommendation from staff, when do you expect to be bringing that to us?
So phase two, and help me out, Sam, here.
It ends August 30th.
August 30th is when we hope departments will bring those ideas and potential cost savings or increases back to the group. And then we're going to review them and discuss them with the departments, and some of them may come through the budget process. And then we also hope that there will be implementation by the end of November of some of these
Or an
changes.
implementation plan for some of the items that are not immediate changes.
Is this happening on a fiscal year from basically, you know, phase one was from January 1st to December 31st, phase, okay.
Yes.
How many phases total, do you think?
So the review process is 3 phases. So we did phase 1 after our update.
Right.
So phase 1 ended in April 30th. Phase 2 ends August 30th, and phase 3 ends at the end of the year.
What is phase 3?
Phase 3 is really looking at those implementation options, bringing what we need to bring to council, making sure that all the pieces are in place to implement.
So what we're hoping is that a lot of the changes can be made without any monetary implications. And so those we can implement immediately, potentially, depending on what the solution might be. In August, we have a council study session scheduled. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be reviewing some of the program requests that you might be seeing for the 2020 budget. And what we're going to do is we're going to review some of those, and we're going to show you how we've tied those to the PBB process and how they meet the goals and the objectives of council. The other thing that we're going to bring forward as well is in the 2020 budget, we're going to be including what we're going to call program highlights. And what that is that's going to kind of pull out some of the larger programs, the more visible programs, and just kind of highlight them. And we're hoping to have that simply on a one-page information sheet that's going to describe the program. It's going to show you what quartile it falls in. It'll show you the budget related to that program, FTEs that kind of match up with that program. So just kind of really highlight some of these programs that we've identified through this process. And granted, there won't be 522 of those program highlights. We're definitely going to be selective in the number simply because there's just too many, but we hope to touch on or enhance or increase them over the coming years.
And this is a strategy other cities have used to tie in priority-based budgeting with their line item budget as well.
Will some of those requests also be requests to sunset programs so that those costs can be reallocated?
Potentially. I think we might also see requests to increase the service level for programs.
And then how are these going to align with the vision?
Shortcut.
That's a shortcut.
What's
So
in
one of
there?
the updates to the priority-based budgeting system is after the comp plan and transportation master plan are done, we will reevaluate the results by which everything is scored in the system and go through a rescoring process. So when you get quartile results, they'll be aligned with all of the Envision work.
Okay.
So it'll be connected in that capacity.
And the plan is we'll revisit that every couple of years, as they might change a little bit.
Typically a 3 to 5 year cycle.
Okay.
So then in the future years, like I said, it should say years 3, 4, and forever or thereafter. We have to continuously review the programs. They change based on needs, staffing requirements. And so that's just going to be an annual process that we're going to have to do. We're going to incorporate it through the budget process, and it'll just be part of the standards going forward. And then the other I mentioned, council recommendations for programs to review. So we want to incorporate that into the budget process as well. We want to know what programs you might be interested that we haven't highlighted or that you feel is important for us to kind of drill down on and really take a good look at those. And as I mentioned, 522 programs in the PBB system currently.
Do you anticipate that going down?
I hope.
I think one of the things we're still working on is refining how programs connect across departments in a functional way that still tells a solid story about what that program and what that service is. And that takes time. It's a cultural shift for us. So I would anticipate it going down, potentially not immediately, but as we learn the system and transition to thinking that way.
So when I look at the schedule, at the end of the year, that's sort of where you're through with the review. So then after that, it's just quarterly updates to the council. So most of the tweaking will just be done with internally, and you guys come back every quarter and just give us an update on what's all going on?
Well, that is true. I'm going to give you an update on what's going on, but I also hope that there's an opportunity for us to discuss where does the council really want to invest their time into a process like this. So I believe we're going to be in a much better position, say, next budget cycle, where we'll have a deeper conversation about some of these programs. As Tiffany and Sam were saying, you may want to identify something very specific, police department department's patrol division, for example. They have a lot of costs associated with that. That may be something that you may want to drill into. So I'm hoping that the calendar for the budget process starts to look a little bit different. You may want to spend more time in the programs and services, talking through that, making sure that you're comfortable with at least the major ones that you're concerned about or have questions about. Then when we get into the actual process for a line item budget, that becomes less of an issue. It's because you focused on the programs and services. Does that make sense?
Does.
So maybe that's a long way to say, I think we're going to have to work together to figure out really what you want to do, how deep you want to get into this.
We'll continue implementing it internally as well. We haven't lined that out on the work plan because we want to see how this first year goes, take the lessons from that, see how it's going to tie into the budget next year, and make sure we're thoughtful in how we set that up.
Fabulous. Yeah, good stuff.
Thank
Wow.
you.
Yeah, good job, thank you. Okay, that's it.
Cool.
Mark, did you have any report?
I do have a memo here. I think I promised you kind of an update on the local partnership funding. So this is kind of this is for your reading pleasure and for you to...
I love reading pleasure.
Yeah, this describes a little bit of the changes that we made here for this next cycle.
Oh, okay.
You know, we, of course, the memo talks about how we've talked about this a couple of times, most recently the retreat back in 1st of February. So this kind of describes what we've done. If you got any questions, just give me a call. We're obviously well into this thing.
But this is already complete, I think it already closed.
It
It
did?
did.
It did or did not?
It's closed.
It's closed.
Yeah, so this already went live, and it's closed, and it's done.
Correct.
Would have liked to have seen it before that happened.
Well, this was the conversation coming out of the retreat, so we kind of followed through on that. If council's interested in making other changes for the next cycle,
Well, and then we had a study session where we talked about it again, and we could not come to a place, and I think it was, as I recall, part of the intention was, I mean, you guys had to get going. I think Kelly had already perhaps opened up the
I can't remember the
program
dates
thing, but
when we started advertising. Said early spring?
yeah,
We open it in April.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, because we had a retreat in February, so I think it had already opened, and part of it is that it does need to sync up with the finality of the comp plan, it needs to sync up with the priority-based budgeting. We're not ready for that right now, so.
Yeah, and I think for this, it was more of, I think we all concluded we weren't necessarily changing the process, but we wanted it to be a more strategic. And that's what we were asking for, is just to kind of see how it was positioned to be more strategic. But I think the other, opportunity from a communication perspective was to let us know that it was published, so we can actually reach out to the community as well and say, here's our grant funding opportunity, et cetera. I stumbled upon it on the website. I wasn't aware that it had gone live.
Well, again, that describes kind of what the steps we did take for the changes. If I'm obviously more than open here if the council wants to look at further changes, whatever that might be.
Okay, thank you. Is that it?
That's it.
We got a email from you earlier today, I believe, on National Night Out.
Oh, yes, thank you.
And the police have, I cannot remember the officer who's doing the coordination, but I think I'm really glad the tweak that they made to it, where they're trying to really combine a lot of these parties to Kettering. And so it'll be a much larger area to have kind of just a real fun community opportunity. There are still some of the neighbors that want to continue to have them in their homes, and so we got that address. But for council, we've always started the meeting late. It's always been a bit of a challenge because everybody's trying to rush in. We don't want to start it too late, so you're leaving parties. The meeting is at this point short. We do have some things we have to do. So we can't move those items, but it will be short. So the party, I think, it starts at 5.
Correct.
At Kettering, and then the other parties, I think some of those even may start earlier. And then we will I would like to keep the meeting at 6:30. I think we can be, if the agenda doesn't grow much, I think we'd probably be out by 6:45 or 7.
No,
No, 6:45.
6:45?
No, that was.
That'd be nice to record.
No, by 7:30 or 6.
Kitchen wraps up at 8.
Yeah, it's like 7:15 or 7:30, and then, so that would still be time to get out. So I'd like to keep it the same.
What's the date of this, National Day?
August
6th.
August 6th.
You'll see an email.
August 6th. Yeah, because right now we just have one item on consent, but we have to do it. It's a first reading for the ballot issue.
Oh, yeah. Time.
So, I mean, honestly, Mark and I talked about it, could we even, move that around? But it needs to be there because of the second reading, so. If nothing too much changes on that, we could be out by 6:45.
Maybe.
No council report. So if there's any issues or problems with that, just let me know, shoot me an email, otherwise we're gonna try to run it that way. And the only other is.
Friday's canceled.
Friday is canceled,
Correct.
yes. Yeah, we were gonna have breakfast with the museum and library board, but we were really struggling with those folks being able to get there in the morning like that.
They were on vacation.
Vacations,
They're not morning
a lot of
people.
people are working, so it was a real challenge. So what we'll do is we'll bring them in for a study session, so hear what they're up to and talk to them a bit. And particularly, I think, as we start to refine the cultural committee that we want to, or how we're going to handle that. The other one is July 25th, 7:30 to 10 at the South Platte Water Renewal Partners Joint Breakfast. I really, really would like to have everybody there. So breakfast starts at 7:30. We always love having breakfast at the sewer treatment plant.
They were having a group walkout, you said?
In the event that is necessary. And then the meeting starts at 8. We met with the plant supervision and mayor and manager from Inglewood, gone over the agenda, and it's a very tight agenda, so we'll keep it moving, and
Good.
we'll have a hard out at 10. So if you please plan that on your calendar. That's it.
How far down, or how far are they along in the process on the biogas?
It's good news.
Okay.
Yep.
You got to come on the 25th.
Good story to tell.
Good
Can't
story.
wait.
It's a good story.
Good.
Good.
So, all right. Thank you very much. Thank you.